Hey friends, what's up? Phillip here, and I just want to talk to you about some lounges for a minute. So first of all, just to give you a rundown, another previous video, we reviewed the American Express Centurion Lounge that was in Atlanta's airport. So this is American Express's largest lounge. It's an incredible experience, but I want to put it in the context of some other lounges. So far in the last year, my wife and I have visited 4 lounges. So we visited the Club MCO, which is the Club Lounge, which is a standard priority pass lounge at Orlando. And then we also stayed at the Air France Business Lounge in Charles de Gaulle. And that was a specific terminal, so it wasn't the big one with the two stories, but it was still a pretty nice experience. And then we also stayed at the American Express Centurion Lounge. And then we also stayed at the 1903 Lounge in Manchester, England. And so that was a part of our business class seats with Virgin Atlantic. And so let's talk about where those lounges fit. So let's start the worst one of all. So it should come as no surprise to any of my priority pass users out there that the Club Lounge at MCO is probably on the lower end of the spectrum. And so this lounge was kind of a smaller lounge, but it was also our first lounge. And this actually, we had access before I had access to Priority Pass. I got into this lounge using my American Express green card. And that had at the time, the Lounge Buddy credits. And so we were able to use those credits to get into this lounge. And so what do you get? So there were 3 hot options. You could get pasta, you could get pretzels, and then you could also get, I think there was a soup as well. And so, the hot options were kind of limited, but they also had some chips and some things like that. They had a Coke machine, and then they also had a bar that was available where some of the drinks were free and some of the drinks had a paid option. And then there was also a coffee machine and some other comfortable areas to sit. And so this lounge, it was fine. It was a great way to kind of get away from the crowds of the Orlando airport. And so, it was a fine lounge. I asked my wife what she would rate it if she would spend the $50 cover charge that we had been credited for paying, for staying there. And it was a resounding no. So we'd probably honestly rate those lounges at $15, $20 a person maybe, just because that we wouldn't have to go to, Starbucks or somewhere else to get, refreshments before the flight. And so not the best experience, but pretty decent. So now let's get into there's kind of a 3-way tie at the top here. So I'm going to have to give the next slot to the 1903 Lounge in Manchester though. So this lounge was pretty nice. We actually stayed there for a couple hours because our flight was delayed out of Manchester. But it was a wonderful experience because there were unlimited drinks that you could serve yourself. There wasn't an actual bar, but there were 2 areas, kind of carousels, where people could go up and mix their own drinks. They could, kind of make mimosas, regular drinks. And they also had the Glenfiddich, which, I ended up having to partake in because it was available. But then they also had a wonderful breakfast. So we were there for breakfast. And so this actually had a really great spread. We had full English breakfast, which includes the baked beans for whatever reason, the stewed tomatoes and everything else. And so that was a great experience. However, they also had some hot options that you could order that included eggs Benedict, poached eggs, toast. You could also get some breakfast sandwiches, things like that. And so that was really awesome. And they had a really fun kind of yogurt, kind of granola bar. So there was a separate bar that just had different flavors of yogurt. They had strawberry, mango, vanilla, and they had all these kind of toppings that you could put on, different types of fruit, different types of granola. And honestly, it was kind of an experience, really. And so that was a great experience. But the only reason that's on 3rd on my list of the 4 that I've been to is because the other ones were just so much better. And not like the 1903 Lounge was bad. Like I would love to go to the 1903 Lounge again. It's just the Air France Lounge and the American Express Centurion Lounge were kind of in their own class, right? So the next up, second spot would have to be the American Express Centurion Lounge. And so the food was really great there. The chicken was nice and moist. The drinks options were incredible. They had 2 different bars. So they had one that was just for whiskey drinks, one that was for everything else. However, the reason why this one kind of takes a step down is, first of all, because while it wasn't difficult to get in, there was a short 10-minute wait, and we had to try to kind of finesse the timing with the online wait list and getting in. And then, my wife and I were talking about how much busier it was, and so that was kind of, it was fine, it was great. It was an experience that I would love to try again, but it was definitely, you know, in some ways fell short of what the Air France Lounge is. And so let's take a look at the king, the Air France Lounge. So the Air France Lounge had, first of all, facials from Clarins that were available, and there were spots available. We actually didn't take them up on it, but the bathrooms were incredibly private, very clean, and then, you know, the breakfast was just incredible. It was very French, right? So they had a croissant bar where you could have different types of croissants, and they had different types of French cheeses, and they had eggs, different kinds of bacon, you know, and just a wonderful area that you could kind of serve yourself. And they had 2 of those areas. It was very spread out. It was a huge lounge. It was actually bigger than the Centurion Lounge in Atlanta, which is American Express's largest lounge. And so that was a huge lounge. So they managed the crowds very well. The service was perfect. You know, once we were done with a cup or a plate, it was picked up within minutes of just us not doing anything with it anymore. They had people that were going around helping you get things that you needed. And, you know, you could, if you wanted to order coffee, you could do that with them, although they were also coffee machines evenly spaced throughout the place. And then they also, Air France has this wonderful place where program where you can actually download and read magazines on your own devices and newspapers, just because you have access to the lounge. And so that was an incredible experience as well. And so, and honestly, that was my first business class lounge. And so that's why things just felt so much better. Honestly, yeah, so that's the ranking. So Air France Lounge in Paris was number 1. The American Express Centurion Lounge was number 2. The 1903 Lounge was number 3 in Manchester, England. And then finally, Orlando's the Club MCO, although they do have a new Plaza Premium Lounge that I'm interested in trying in Terminal C. But anyway, that's my rating of the lounges that I visited so far. As I add to that list, I'll be sure to keep you guys in the loop. Until then, I'll see you next time.